Whose practice have you gone to watch? Well, I can't go watch a practice. I'm in season. Yes, you can. You find a way. When's your off day? Whose practice have you gone to watch in person? What coaches have you talked to in person? What coaches have you written a letter to? Have you emailed? When I was a graduate assistant, I hand wrote a letter to every Division I coach in America. And you'd be amazed how much information I got back. People want to share. People want to help if you're at a different level. If you're at the same level, maybe not as much, right? But they want to help you, especially if you're a younger coach. What books do you read? What podcasts do you listen to? Podcasts are wonderful because I can be working out. I can be working in the yard, and I can still use that time to learn. What clinics do you go to, like this one? So you're going to learn in the highest level peer-reviewed research. And that's what I'm going to try. Everything I'm going to give to you is going to be framed in peer-reviewed research. What that means is right now I do studies. For example, I can tell you lots of things like where do you aim at on a shot? You know what the research says? Should you aim at the front of the room, the back of the room? You hear that old argument? Should the ball go in the center? You know, mathematically, the best place for the ball to go in is just over 7 centimeters behind dead center. You shouldn't aim for the dead center of the hoop. Mathematically, the hoop is not the biggest. That is useless information if you can't translate it into something that matters to a kid. Right? I've done studies of coaches. I've gone and followed coaches. I've watched coaches' practices, their games, the way they deal with the media. Right? And so then I do that. I collect the data, I analyze it, and then you send it off. And then there's a group of experts in the field, and they look at it and they say, oh, this made sense, or you need to fix that, or why'd you do it that way? And then it gets published. So it's not just me up here just saying, here's what I did. It's experts. Right? And that's what peer-reviewed research is. Anybody read this book? Marcus Buckingham. All right? Standout. He talks about, he gives a great story about Best Buy. One of the worst performing Best Buy stores got a new manager. The manager gave all his employees whistles. You see somebody doing something good on the floor, blow a whistle, point it out. He's now empowered all his employees to recognize success. Now imagine you're in a store and you just... They went from the worst performing stores to one of the best performing stores. So what did Best Buy, a huge corporation, do? They said, holy cow, we found the secret, right? We now want all our stores in the chain. Here it is, give everybody a whistle, right? Legal gets involved. Here's the 10 times you can blow the whistle. Here's when you should never blow a whistle. And it didn't work. It didn't work in other stores. It didn't work in other contexts. It worked for that manager who was able to sell it to those people right there. Adapt, don't blindly adopt. The 6 no's. I'm going to go over these in a little bit, so if you can't write it down, again, the slides are online. But the first no is yourself. The middle 3, one of the best motor behavior specialists and sport and exercise psychologists is a guy named Craig Risberg at the University of Tennessee. Fortunate enough to get to know him, and he's mentored me, and he's a professor emeritus now there. And he always talked about the 3 there in the middle. He said the athlete, the task, and the environment. You've got to understand those as a coach. Number 5 is your opponent, and number 6 is your why. We've talked about that a lot this week. If you didn't get those, you'll get them here when I advance. So anybody ever been to Delphi, or Delphi, how you pronounce it? In Greece, ancient Greece. This is where the oracle was, right? When you go there, there's a big rock, looks like an Audi belly button. They call it the navel of the world, the middle of the world, right? This is where the oracle was. You went there to get advice. Should we go to war, this or that? The most important temple to Apollo, engraved on the top in Greek there. I apologize if my Greek's not good. Is roughly Gnothes Theofton, which means know thyself. Know thyself. Before you come ask for advice, you better know yourself first, right? How can you know yourself? I'm always trying to get better, right? There's personality tests you can take, like Myers-Briggs. You can do Strengths Finders 2.0 is a great one. I just did a Coach DISC profile by a group called Athlete Assessments that looks at D, I, S, and C are 4 behaviors they look at. Everybody can talk about personality, but behavior is what you actually do. And they analyze what are your behaviors in coaching. It was phenomenal. So what are you doing to learn, to get feedback? Because I would ask my players and my assistants for feedback, and you know what they would say most of the time? That was great. Right? Because you're the boss. Oh, yeah, it was great. Yeah, I loved it. Loved everything. You're doing a great job, coach. I'm like, come on. No, it was great. Right? So it's hard. So how do you get unbiased feedback? So those are some ways. And one of the best part about the Coach DISC profile was you get anonymous feedback. So I sent it out to players, assistant coaches. I was coaching varsity boys. I got the varsity girls coach. I got some feedback I wouldn't get. And Coach talked about the truth hurting. I'm going to tell Coach it can hurt, right? Because we don't see our own flaws. And I'm going to talk about that some more here in a second. This is called Johari's window. If you Google that, you can get this. It's free. It came out in the 1950s. Right? So when I told you the story about me giving up everything to go get my doctorate because I love coaches and want to help coaches, I was telling you something about myself. If you think about this square, I know it's probably hard to see probably there, but if you imagine 4 quadrants, and in the top left quadrant up there is what you know about yourself, right? And what we're trying to do in this bottom left is unknown by others. We want to make that bigger. You want to be able to share something about yourself. You can overshare. You don't want to tell too much, but we want to enlarge that window. You also want to, in the top right is the blind area. It's what you don't know about yourself. You're always wanting to learn it, so we want to enlarge that window. So we want to gradually take it down there towards that bottom right-hand corner. Once you know yourself, you got to be true to yourself. Shakespeare famously wrote, "To thine own self be true." Several coaches this week, I remember in particular Coach Miller in Arizona and Coach Stevens with the Celtics talked about, be who you are, be yourself. After you know yourself, Tony Dungy wrote in some of his core values, and I highlighted the bottom one, what he would tell his team is do what we do. I stole that, right? With my teams, here's what I would say constantly. Know who we are, do what we do. And sometimes you can add do what we do best, and that could be individually and as a group. Now let's say little Johnny is a great rebounder, and little Johnny starts jacking threes. Now I could get on little Johnny and say, you cannot shoot threes. You shot 17% from 3, and I can just pummel him with information to prove to him that he's incompetent and he can't shoot. Or I can say to little Johnny, know who you are. Now we have a shorthand, and he understands. Do what you do best. You help the team best by getting rebounds, by running to the rim, by setting great screens. That's what we need from you right now if we're going to get where we want to go as a team. Me and a colleague wrote a chapter in a book about holistic athlete-centered coaching. My grandmother would say that's a bunch of 50-cent words, all right? And what it is what great coaches have always done. It's just new language to package it. If you look on the left there, that's the old Trivial Pursuit, if you ever played that back in the day. Now, what's good about this picture is it represents there's different aspects of our personalities, different aspects of a player. So, holistic athlete-centered coach considers the cognitive, the mental, how you think, the physical, and that can be nutrition, sleep, strength and conditioning, the emotional, the social, again, back to connectedness and that relatedness, and the spiritual. I'll say those again. So it's cognitive, or your mental, your physical, emotional, social, and spiritual. Now, what's wrong with this picture is those all overlap. They're not individually compartmentalized. One piece can impact other pieces, but a holistic athlete-centered coach tries to incorporate all of those versus the conquest coach. A conquest coach is all about the ring. They're all about the championship. And I know a lot of you have probably coached a lot longer and a lot better than I have. I'm absolutely certain of that, right? But I was lucky enough to get a couple of rings, right? So I brought a couple of them, right? Here's the thing about these rings. They're great symbols, but you know what these rings have never done? They've never sent me an email. They've never written me a letter. They never called me. They never said, Coach, I'm getting married. Coach, my wife's pregnant. Coach, I got a promotion. Or the flip side, negative news, right, that they call and tell you. This week, right before I left, I got this in the mail, right? Got a letter. Well, you know what? Legacy. The first day of tryouts at one of my schools, we're a big school, the largest system right in Atlanta, in Georgia, had 150 kids try out. 150. First thing we do, all 150 kids, you write a letter to thank somebody that's made an influence in your life. Before I know if you can play or not. First assignment I do in my college classes, you write a thank you letter. An attitude of gratitude gives you altitude. It lifts you and others up. And you want to constantly cultivate that. Kids have no idea how to fill out an envelope. You should see, right? So you teach them how to do that. So just this week I got this one. Part of it says, Coach, I am more than thankful for your influence in my life, even though I didn't show it in high school, right? You taught me to be confident in my own abilities, and that has helped my teaching career. He is now a teacher and a coach at the middle school level and doing a great job. Legacy. I was taught things by my mentors. I try and pass them on because I want to be a holistic athlete-centered coach and not a conquest coach. One coach I know that this made a difference in, and in fact, I have a student right now in our cohort in the master's program. So in our master's program, you start one summer and you finish the next summer. So the first summer, and we go into much more detail, obviously. First summer, he's presented with this, all right? just this year, we just had our final exam was due yesterday at noon, online, and he had said that he thought he was going to get fired. So he got presented with this information. He thought he was going to get fired. At the postseason banquet this year, he got a standing ovation. The coach on the left there is Coach Sean Smith. He was my assistant coach. United States veteran, served in Bosnia, special education teacher. He was a college football player, college basketball player, great guy. The three players in there, three seniors, there was an argument who could ride in his car. We're at team camp at Jacksonville State University in Alabama. All right? I always took hard jobs. Like if you looked at my career record, you would get up and walk out right now. Right? But both places, I was a head coach for 10 years. We went to the state playoffs for the first time in school history, set a school record for wins, won some level of championship that had never been done there. I take this job. The year before, they lost their last 10 games. They graduated a 6'7" scorer that played college basketball, graduated a 6'6" kid that played college basketball, graduated a 6'2" kid that played college football, and graduated a 6'2" Marine. I would always have a meeting where I would sit down with every kid and parent and tell me about the program, right? And I would say, if you have anything you don't like, now's your one chance to tell me. You're going to get it out, and then I don't want to hear any more complaints, right? And I asked them about their goals. And this one kid told me when I took this job, he said, Coach, I just want to win one game. One. That was his goal. I want to win one game, right? The principal, the AD, they're like, good luck, Coach, right? Seriously. So we go to team camp, and the thing I told Sean was we want to be relentlessly positive because they've struggled, right? Relentlessly positive. I want you to play a lot of people. Those were the two things we talked about. The head coach before, I never saw him coach personally, but what the players and parents told me was he was more old school. He'd won lots of games, but was more of a, hard driving, just I want a production, your piece of meat, get me this so I get that, right? And sometimes if your head coach is that way, your assistants act that way. When I coached football in high school, our head coach was that way. And I remember a Thursday night, I'm coaching JV football. Kid makes a mistake, he's coming off the field. The head coach says to me, first year assistant, jump him, coach, right? Like I've seen him done many times. So I did just what I'd seen him do. I grab his face mask and I chew him out on the way to the sideline. I just rip him. And I see inside his face mask, the kid just wither. I let go of his face mask and I turn and look at the head coach, and he's standing back there with his arms crossed, just beaming, just smiling like that. And I said to myself, I'll never treat a kid that way again. Well, Coach Smith cared about kids, and I'll prove that here in a second. But he coached the way his head coach did. So relentlessly positive, play a lot of people. Last game of team camp at Jacksonville State, we're super successful. The kids can't believe it, right? And Sean Smith, he tells me on the court, I can see him right now, he's saying, Coach, I really like coaching this way. Those were some of the last words he ever spoke. On the way home, there's one section of I-20 where there's no trees, there's no median. Beautiful sunshiny day, freak rainstorm while it's sunshining, road's the slickest. 18-wheeler comes across the median, hits the car with Sean, and those three kids head on, kill Sean instantly. Kid on the left's got his teeth knocked out, knee torn up. Kid in the middle is not hurt physically, but torn up emotionally. Kid on the right is in a coma. We didn't caravan, we kind of drove on our own. We'd gotten kind of separated. So the one that was not hurt physically calls me. It's in the newspaper. He called me first. He didn't call his parents first, who were great, loving, caring parents. He called his coach first, not because I was a great coach. I just got the job. That's the power of coaches. At the memorial service for Coach Smith, 2,000 people there, kids of every race, every ethnic background, every socioeconomic status got up there and talked. He's a special ed teacher. You know, when I didn't have a washing machine, Coach Smith washed my clothes for me. When I didn't have food, Coach Smith bought me food. I didn't like him at first because he was hard on me, right? Nobody said he was great at X's and O's. He was great at out-of-bounds plays, right? They all talked about how he cared about them. But for some reason, that had not translated into his coaching because he was not given permission. When I gave him permission to do that, he did that and he was great at it. So give your coaches permission to be holistic athlete-centered coaching and know your athletes. Matt McMahon's a friend of mine I coached with at Tennessee. Just finished his first year at Murray State. He's one of those guys that just finished his first year. So I asked him, I said, here's what I'm speaking on. Give me one tip. He said, take the time to figure out the best way your players learn. Was the number one thing he said. Different players learn in different ways. Is it on the court? Is it film study? Is it X and O's? And have clarity in communication. You can't communicate the same way to every player. if you'll humor me, in the dorm this week, I wrote this poem because you communicate different ways about knowing the athlete. It's called Dear Coach. Do you know me? I want you to really think about this first line. Do you know me as well as your plays? Think about that. Do you know your players as well as your plays? Do you know me as well as your plays? Do you know about my life and if I had a good day? Am I feeling great or in a foul mood? Is something wrong at home? Have I had any food? A breakup, a test makeup, a lineup shakeup? Is my role feeling tight like old clothes that don't fit? Am I having any fun? Did I threaten to quit? Do I feel connected? Do I have a say in the way that we practice or the way that we play? Are my beliefs respected? Am I allowed to be me? Do you abuse your power or show love to me? You see, everyone has bad days and good, but mine would be better if you only would make time to see me as a person who plays, not as a player you control like on NBA 2K. You are my coach and you bring out my best, not by letting me slide or accepting less. I know that you care because you show me each day at practice, workouts, and games, home and away. One day I may coach on a court just like you, and I just might treat players like you taught me to do. My daughter is 4 years old. They ask them questions at their daycare, and they take a picture of their answer. I go in a couple weeks ago, and it says, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know what she said? A basketball coach. And I have a lot of people say, well, I wish my kid would say doctor or surgeon. Now, there's no better profession than a basketball coach, and you all are setting the example. Know the task. Know the task. What are you asking your players to do? I love the fact that we went through our skill sessions with the coaches because the longer it's been since you've played, the less you remember what it was like to play. And a drill might look good on paper, but you might be asking them to do something that they cannot or maybe should not do. So know the task for the players, know the task as a coach. One tip I'm going to give you is give your program a dose, D-O-S-E. I want you to take one day on your schedule this year for a day of service and engagement. That's what D-O-S-E stands for. Put it on your schedule publicly and say, we're going to take one day at least, and we're going to serve our community. On the right-hand side there, we went and worked with a special needs league, right? That kid right there that's dunking, he was a referee's son. He said when he was born, he said he wouldn't live 2 hours. Then he wouldn't live 2 days, then 2 months, 2 years. Right? The only way he could communicate really was non-verbally, and this was the signal. He had huge braces on his legs, but this was it. It was thumbs up. He had every reason to say thumbs down. So now my players see that, right? Now you're going to complain about running, you're complaining about working out, you're going to complain about practice. And they do this. They get outside themselves. They learn things. And my player in the picture there, Tarek Sanchez, he started a program now. He's a grown adult professional. He mentors young kids now. Right? That legacy is repeated. Mandela, famous quote, said, sport has the power to change the world. So we're talking about the environment, right? The rest of the quote says it has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. It speaks to youth in a language they understand. Sport can create hope where once there was only despair. It is more powerful than government in breaking down racial barriers. Do we need that more than ever in America? And if you believe that sport can change the world, like Mandela did and like I do, who can change sport? Coaches. Coaches can change sport. Know your opponent is the next one. Most people, Bobby Knight introduced me, right, I didn't know Bobby Knight, but speaking at a clinic, right, Sun Tzu, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. The quote goes on, it's a famous one, but you've got to know your competition. I took one head job one time, and I'll be honest with you, I was wowed by the facilities. It was a new state I came in, and they had like college-like facilities here at a high school. I'm like, this is amazing. I didn't realize everybody in that county had those facilities. There was no competitive advantage, right? Know your opponent. Know your why, and share your why. Do you want fewer parent problems? Who has parent problems? Share your why. You know what? People would always laugh. I would have angry parents come up to me after games, and you know what they would say? They would say, I'm sorry, little Johnny didn't play better for you. Right? And the girls comes over, like, what? My parents want me fired, they want me strung up. And literally, parents would come and complain and be upset at their kids. Right? I had very, very few parents because I would sell my why. The picture you can't really see, extrinsic motivation, the rings. It's a picture of Bill Russell with his rings. The money, I put a nickel and dime there because most of us don't get anything, right? The attention, those are all extrinsic rewards. Or, remember, peer-reviewed research, what does research say? If you are intrinsically motivated by personal enjoyment, achievement, interest in the job, and feelings of challenge, and again, all this research, this is specifically at coaches, right? Then look what happens. You have a better experience as a coach, and so do your players, if you're extrinsically motivated. And they know that, and your players know that. Talked about my two coaches. My college coach is on the right there, Jerry Wainwright. He's now an associate head coach at Fresno State, went to the tournament this year. But he took Wilmington to the tournament, Richmond to the tournament, DePaul to the NIT. Wall Street Journal wrote an article about him last year. It wasn't about any of those wins. It was because he writes letters to players. Where did I get the idea to make my players write letters? Legacy, right? He writes, the Wall Street Journal, a national newspaper, did a story about assistant coach because he writes letters. The cycle of continuous coaching improvement. This is what you got to do. And this is the big thing I teach my students, right? Everybody wants to skip steps. I've adapted this from several sources. This is what I've learned from my experience in teaching coaches how to coach. In my classes, they have to come on the court and they have to coach for 20 minutes of skill. They have to learn how to, if I say rotate to the right, who's right? You're right? Am I right? They have to learn the logistics. Then they have to teach for 40 minutes where they take the individual skill and they combine it into a team setting. So first you have to learn, right? That's what you're doing right now. Then you have to plan, right? Your practice, you should have a practice plan. It should be detailed to the minute. There should be no wasted time or space. You execute your plan or you coach. Now, number 4 is what great coaches do and young coaches don't. You need to be able to improvise. You have a plan, but you adjust the plan. You improvise. Any musicians in here, right? A jazz musician improvises, but it's within a certain structure, right? So great teachers of anything, they've done research on teachers in the classroom. Great teachers in the classroom improvise. Then you reflect. I worked with one coach, he did what he called an autopsy after a game. And he had a form, but it was all X's and O's. But do you reflect on your practices? Do you reflect on your games on not just the X's and O's, but the relationships and what's going on? Then you revise and you repeat. If you want to get better, this cycle continues and continues, because now I know what I need to learn. I know where my weak spots are. On the left, you need to download this. It's free. In the rest of the world, it's called the International Sport Coaching Framework. If you Google that, you can get a free PDF. In the rest of the world, coaching is looked at much differently. I've had the good fortune now in my role to travel around the world. I've spoken face-to-face with coach developers and educators on every continent but Antarctica, right? In the rest of the world, coaching, you have to be qualified before you step on with a kid. It's not, hey, nobody will coach, will you do it? So they developed this framework. Professional knowledge is not enough, is what their study showed. Professional knowledge of X's and O's, strength and conditioning, it's not enough. You have to have interpersonal knowledge, you have to be able to communicate it, and you have to have intrapersonal knowledge. You have to know your why, you have to know yourself. I don't have time to go into that, but download that and check it out, see what you think. On the left there is one of my assistant coaches. I'm very proud that in my 10 years as a head coach, 4 of my assistants became head coaches, 2 became athletic directors, and 1 planted a church. Right? I had great staff. The guy on the left, Jeremy Huckabee, hardworking, great with kids, great coach. When he left, he took a head job at a girls program, hadn't been to the state playoffs in 32 years. Took our package, basically. Now, he added some stuff, he's a good coach, but basically running our stuff that I stole from other people. Right? We had moderate success the year before where I was. Right? He goes, first year they go to the state playoffs, first time in 32 years. Second year, they go to the Final Four in the highest classification in Georgia. Really good basketball. Then he goes to a new school, brand new program. Goes to girls. 8 of his 10 girls, he's only got 10 girls, 8 of his 10 girls have never played organized basketball. Now running the same X's and O's that just went to the Final Four, 25-game regular season. Do you know how many games he won? I saw a guess of 1. You're an optimist. 0. He goes 0-25 running the exact same stuff that just went to the Final Four. But then in Georgia, they call your conference a region. In the region tournament, they win. They win a game to go 1-25. They lose the next one, finish 1-26. In the middle is Tracy Tipton. Tracy Tipton was the head coach at Collins Hill, who coached the young lady on the right. You know her? Maya Moore. When she coached Maya Moore, she won state championships and national championship at Collins Hill. She's now the head coach at Central Gwinnett. But she had gotten out of the head coaching role and was an assistant coach on the team that was 0-25. So here you have a coach that just went to the Final Four running a package. You have a national championship winning assistant coach, and you go 0-25. It's not the X's and O's, folks. So if you think about those 3 levels, and I'm sorry that's hard to see in this light, but you remember those 3 circles? If you have 2, if you have professional knowledge, and you have communication skills, but you don't know yourself, you can come off as inauthentic. Right? You have to be you. Several coaches have talked about that, and I'm going to give you a couple examples. Phil Jackson, he did a lot of things I could not pull off. I don't know enough about Native American heritage, right? I don't know enough about Zen Buddhism. But one thing Phil Jackson did was give his players books. I can do that because I like to read, and I did do that. And one of the neatest things is when I'll have players now mail me books years after they've played for me. Again, that legacy. On the bottom right there, Joe Madden with the Cubs, very unorthodox, right? He had a mime lead stretching in spring training. I don't know what Alan Stein thinks about that, but I would not be able to do that. But it was his personality. Sean Miller this week, I stole that quote and I went and adjusted the PowerPoint. He said, you have to be who you are as a coach. You can't fake it. If you have professional knowledge and you know yourself, but you can't communicate it, then that's bad because the people are greater than the process. It drives me crazy that everybody wants to give Nick Saban credit for the idea of the process. He didn't invent it. He's been in coaching for 80 years. I can show you 80 years ago where coaches talked about the process, right? The process is so important, but it's the people. Remember the package that went 0-25, right? The people are greater than the process. Coach Summit, I was fortunate enough to work beside for 3 years. I was able to watch her practices. My wife worked for the Lady Vols 3 doors down from Coach. I have a dog named Summit. Right? She treated me like I was a national champion. This is 99 to 2002. First time I ever saw Coach Summit when I got the job there, she's wearing a Duke shirt. You know why she's wearing a Duke shirt? Because they had lost to Duke in the NCAA tournament that year before. So she's working out in a Duke shirt. But she said, you win in life with people, right? Obviously. If you have communication skills and you know yourself, but you don't know your stuff, obviously that's bad. It can be unsound and unsafe. So we want that sweet spot in the middle. In that middle where all three overlap, it must be based on values. And you've got to have a philosophy that you believe in. You've got to have a vision, a mission, and a core value. You've got to have them. But I agree with you, Coach Eastman. They are worthless if it's just something on a piece of paper. It's got to be something that's reinforced daily. In every meeting, everybody does the meeting on the center jump circle. In every meeting, I'm talking about one of our core values. And I'm talking about where I saw somebody live it out or how we're going to do it in practice today. In our team handbook, on the wall, when I talk to parents, on the website, we're always reinforcing it. It means nothing if it's just a piece of paper. Right? When I was coaching football, I saw Coach Holtz speak. And Coach Holtz said, you go to a clinic, you watch. Anytime a coach talks about philosophy, all the pins go down. And as soon as they talk about X's and O's, well, they're writing like crazy. Right? He said they got it backwards. And I agree with him. So again, you want fewer parent problems? Have that and communicate it. You know what? That picture is from Time Magazine. You know whose wrists those are? Those are Steph Curry's wrists. You know what he has tattooed on his wrist? TCC on one of them. Do you know what that is? That was the core values at Davidson College for Bob McKillop. I had a player play for Coach McKillop, and I worked his camps for years. Right? Trust, commitment, care. Steph Curry's got it tattooed on his wrist because it made such an impact on him. All right, and I'm friends with a lot of Davidson players and coaches online, and all the time they'll put like hashtag TCC. Right? If you ever see that, that's what they're talking about. Trust, commitment, care. I took that and I changed it because I adapted it. I don't adopt mine. Right? It was trust, love, and commitment because I think love is more powerful. If you do that, on the left is a guy that played for me, Eric Scruggs. He was a Marine in 2004, 2005 in Iraq. When he gets out of his tour of duty in Iraq, he calls me when he gets back to Hawaii. He says, Coach, I wanted you to be one of the first people I called. Well, you know what? His parents went to the school board and complained about me. His parents went to the principal and the athletic director and complained about me. But when your coaching is based on core values, you don't care, right, about what the outside says because you know who you are, right? The guy on the middle, the right, it's the same kid, played for me. Came down, he had cancer, had a tumor on his back, lost the ability to walk. Ended up passing away from cancer. I go to the funeral. I've since moved on. I haven't seen the family in 3 years. The mom comes up and she's hugging me. She's literally slinging me around, hugging me and saying, thank you, thank you, thank you for how you coached my son. Again, never mentioned a press break, never mentioned his own offense. Leadership. Legacy leadership is something most people have not heard about, and when I found it, I've run with it. Legacy leadership, I ask you to write it down. I don't have time to explain, but if you think of a continuum, the fear, I can motivate by fear and it works in the short term. Some coaches talk about the run and sit method. You ever heard that? The run and sit? If you screw up in practice, you run. If you screw up in a game, you sit. Right? That works for the short term. It will motivate for the short term. It will not motivate in the long term. Do you ever tell your players, I want you to shoot a certain number of shots? Let's just say, I want you to make 100 shots. How many of them then go make 150? They're going to do the minimum if it's based on fear. Right? Then there's transactional. If you do this, then that. If you work hard, then you'll play, right? And there's a time for that. There's a time for all of these, but it shouldn't be based on one. Transformational means I sell a vision. I get you to believe in something, the USA, winning the gold medal, something bigger than yourself, and together we're going to work towards that. That's a very good thing. Servant leadership. I put you in front of me. What can I do to help you? And if you know I care about you and I'll help you, then you're more willing to buy into that transformational vision. And then legacy leadership says, I want an intentional reproduction of leaders with those values. So I'm going to do all of that of servant leadership and transformational leadership. And I want that repeated. I want to intentionally plan. How many of you have ever said, we don't have any leaders this year? Leaders graduated. Seniors won't lead. Nobody step up. You ever said that? I said it, right? How much do you work on leadership? Now wait, here's the key. It's not, we're going to go in a classroom now and we're going to read a book and we're going to watch a DVD, because I tried that, right? How do you develop leadership on the court, during your practice, in the locker room during your practice, on the bus? It's through your vision that's translated into these values that you want to transmit. So I did a study on that. If you want to read it, over 300 pages, 100,000 words, you can download it. I can tell you it's not on there. But there's 3 things you got to have: motives, methods, and measures. Number 1 is you got to have a pure motive. These are real coaches. I watch their practices. I watch their shoot-arounds. I watch their media sessions. I analyze their media guides. This is Nikki Fargas. She's the head coach at LSU. I want to read you a quote. Another thing is this. So I believe for me, first of all, it doesn't matter to me what religion or spirituality you believe in or don't believe in. I coached in Metro Atlanta. I had Christians, atheists, Hindus, Muslims, and Jews all on the same team. Everybody is allowed and expected to express yourself and be yourself, right? For me, Christianity is an important part of me. For these coaches, they self-identified as Christians, and the question was, does your faith influence your leadership when you coach as a legacy leader? So Coach Caldwell said, I feel like I've got to make a difference. I feel like it's a responsibility that I have to the African-American community. We talk about being a woman and being a woman of color, that I'm a double minority, but I don't look at it that way. I was put on this earth the way God made me, and whatever color I was going to be, or male or female, I know what my spirit is. She has a pure motive. Kelly Jolly Harper is the head coach at Missouri State. Authentic and sincere is the second one. She said, these kids have to know that you care about them. And maybe going and putting your arm around them after they've struggled, instead of being aggressive with them after they've struggled, we'll say that. Billy Kennedy at Texas A&M won the SEC this year, right? You have to be follow-centered, not self-centered. I think it's about investing in people around you. Try to build them into being all that they can be so they can use their God-given talents and share and serve others. That's what I try to do, be a servant leader. Affectionate and emotional. Coach Jolly said, I think my players just need to feel that I will love them. That's what I do. I love my players. Methods. So we had motives, now we have the methods. Well, how do you do that? Mike Jarvis was at Florida Atlantic when I did this study. He said, you want people to say, maybe he acts that way because he's a man of God and I want to be like him. And I want to be like Mike. You know what I mean? If I can help 1 or 2 kids, then my coaching career has been a success. This one's key. Can you influence without exerting authority? You all have power as the head coach. You have playing time. But how can you get them to do what you want to do without using that authority? Coach Fargas said, my staff and my team, they know I'm a God-fearing woman, but I don't have to go out and tell them that, you know. Through our works, let it speak. Vulnerable and transparent. Remember Johari's window? Remember we want to move that window? As coaches, we're competitive by nature, and sometimes you just forget there's more to it than wins and losses. I think I rely on my faith to keep me grounded during those times. And if you do that, then you'll have changed lives. Then you get notes. Then they get calls, and you see all that. Do you know how good we are as coaches at telling kids how bad they are? Showing them on film where they screwed up? Showing them on stats how bad they are? How often do you try and show them how good they are? Do you design your drills to let them be successful? Again, I'm going to have to, well, actually, Coach Stevens talked about this, but the biggest thing, if you're not familiar with Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K, and the growth mindset, then you need to get familiar with it. And I'm going to summarize it really, really simple. And I know you can't see that, but that graphic's on there, but this is it. You're either trying to prove something. If you have a fixed mindset, I can't change, it's just the way I am. And I'm going to prove to you I'm good, or I'm going to prove to you I'm bad. Versus, if I have a growth mindset, I am improving. I can always improve. So I either prove or I can improve. And failure is temporary. The 1 Minute Manager is one of the best-selling management books of all time. And the thing that stuck with me from that was they talked about catch your people doing something right. Catch them doing something right. In practice, you see them. catch them doing it right. The last thing is a quote I tried to share with my teams, and this is what I really think is important. Little things and little people matter because there are no little things and there are no little people. Everything and everyone matters. Every player, whether the 15th player or the first player, the way you do anything is the way you'll do everything. I tell this to my students all the time also, right? We do tasks based on the value others have assigned to it. I'm going to work hard on this assignment because the professor or the teacher says it's worth a test grade. I'm going to work hard on this drill because we're playing our arch rival, right? But if you'll do things because of the value assigned to you, the value you give yourself, and not the value somebody else put on a task, it'll change your life. Thank you so much for having me here. I appreciate it.